What's up, chess player? Grandmaster is the highest title in chess, incredibly tough to achieve. People are learning their entire life to get to there, and of course, just a small part of all of the chess players ever achieve that level. And once you play against a Grandmaster, you feel that, well, it's your chance, you have to show yourself, you have this incredible opportunity, so you don't want to spoil it. And when you win a game against Grandmaster, well, that means that you are incredibly strong and something went really good for you. So today I want to show you step by step how I managed to beat one of the strongest grandmasters in Germany, Daniel Friedman. Not only that, but that allowed me to share the first place in the German Rapid Chess Championship. So that was an incredible experience for me. So I'm gonna share with you this game so you can learn so much out of it and hopefully implement those key concepts in your own games. So I have played this game as white. It was a rapid time control, 15 minutes plus 10 seconds, and I have achieved an incredible, at least for me, 94.5% of accuracy in this game according to chess.com and 2850 ELO performance. So that seems like an incredible game because, well, it's a real live game, not online, and you're playing against such a strong opponent to achieve such an accuracy. For me, it feels incredible, so let me share the game with you. It started with the move d4, d5, c4, and e6. Nothing special so far, but I played here knight to c3, and already the first, well, not such a popular choice here by black, c5. Well, my opponent wants to win this game because a draw doesn't really give anything to both of us, so we want to win to get to the first places. And so what my opponent decided to do is to go all in here and took on d4. That is an extremely interesting variation which I had pretty much no idea about. That was a complete surprise for me, knight c6, because black is just sacrificing the pawn here with an idea to get ahead in terms of the development. And if you think about the rapid chess, it's just a perfect recipe to win the game. Because yes, you're sacrificing the pawn, but you get the initiative, you create 100 of threats for your opponent, and sooner or later he crushes. And that is a way to win the game, especially if you are stronger. So that was the plan of my opponent, but unfortunately for him, it failed. Let me show you why. So I took the pawn here. I thought, well, if I want to win the game, and of course that's my only goal, I have to take a risk. Because if I don't, if I just play it somehow normally, then I give a free hand to my opponent. He gets a chance to attack me. d4 is incredibly dangerous, or maybe I start with e3, but then my bishop is passive, and my opponent can freely develop all of the pieces. Everything is perfect, and he's gonna have the initiative despite having an isolated pawn. So if I really want to be active, if I really want to win this game, I have to take this risk. I have no right to be scared of. So I closed my eyes and I took on d5, and let's see what happens, because my opponent is making all of the moves instantly, and so it's very difficult for me to deal with such a situation, because basically I'm playing against the engine so far, as long as my opponent knows all of the moves, and that is of course very difficult, especially in a dangerous, risky position like that, because one mistake and you can find yourself in big trouble. So he played queen to c7 here instantly. I played knight to f3, which seems to be the best move here, and then knight to f6, and that is the moment I made my first mistake. But I guess in a practical sense it helped me so much, because my opponent wasn't in his book anymore, because nobody would expect such a move. Instead of a normal queen b3, which seems to be more or less the only option, you don't go back along the d file, because then the rook is coming and your queen is in trouble once again. So queen to b3 seems to be the most logical response here, but for some reason I chose to play queen to b5 instead. I don't know, I thought I'm pinning the knight, and if the bishop goes back, goes to d7, then I'm gonna play queen to b3. And that is exactly what happened, but it doesn't feel that logical, especially if you prepare such a variation with the engine. You don't look for such opportunities, and so my opponent started to think on his own. And the position, thank God, is still okay for white, a little bit better, and we started to play on our own. My opponent still has to find some active moves, because if he does nothing, if he just allows me to finish my development, then I have a healthy extra pawn, no compensation whatsoever, and that's only me who can create problems. But, well, he went with bishop b4, a very good move here. bishop to d2. I just wanted to make sure there are no troubles here, because I thought, yeah, knight f4 is coming, that might be very annoying, and I don't have any time to go away with a bishop, because I really need that defender for myself. So castles happened here, e3, I just continue my development, that's the best thing for me to do, and now bishop e6. And that is, I guess, a very important moment here. Maybe you could tell me, what would you do here if you were in my shoes? So why to move? There are queen to a4, queen to c2, bishop to c4. What would you do? Pause the video for a second and try to find out the best way to go on here. So according to the engine, queen a4 is the best move, but I was a little bit worried about a6 and then b5, and it felt for me like I might be in trouble here. So I played queen to c2 immediately, which is a little bit worse, but still white is a little bit better here. Knight e5, my opponent continues to create some problems for me, and I played here knight to d4. I thought, well, the knight is protected here, the knight is in the center, so it controls 1,000 squares. All of them are very, very important, and why not? It's also blocking this d file. Yeah, no drawback to this move. I thought, well, one thing is I'm not developing new pieces, but so is my opponent. So he played bishop to c4, and here is, I would say, a critical moment in the game, because I have found an incredible move for white, which basically solves all of white problems. So feel free to pause the video for a second and find it, because that is a very useful exercise for you. You have to deal with those problems. If you can do that, then you're basically unstoppable. Okay, let's see if you have figured out correctly. The best move in the position is knight to e4. You can see the exclamation point here. It's not that logical when you start to think about it, because, well, once again, instead of developing new pieces, my king is still in the center. I'm making another move with the same piece which has already moved, which is against what I normally teach on this channel. But of course, you know, chess is a game of exceptions. For every rule, there are thousands of exceptions, and that is exactly one of them. So why is knight e4 so great? Because first of all, it's a double attack. I'm attacking the bishop on b4, the knight on f6. Secondly, this bishop on c4 is now pinned, as the queen is hanging there. And also, I'm a pawn up, but my opponent has the initiative. What does it mean? It means that I have to exchange as many pieces as possible to avoid any troubles, and then come to a position where I can just convert my extra pawn into a full victory. So my opponent played here knight to d4, d5, sorry. He didn't want to exchange the pieces, because if you take on e4, then I wanted to take on b4, now I'm threatening to take, the bishop is still pinned, and I thought that helps me. I have a pair of bishops, I have a way to castle and just, yeah, forget about all of the problems. So he played knight e5, which I wasn't anticipated at all. So I played the move rook to c1, and you can see chess.com says it's a miss, because apparently I could have just taken on c4 right away, and then took on, and then I might take on b4 as well. And so all of the bishops are gone. Queen goes somewhere like e2. Everything is good. Next move is castles. Yeah, there is one tactical trick here, knight takes b2, I cannot take back, and I have to castle instead. I mean, there was a pin threat for me, obviously, but then, I don't know, it doesn't feel that logical. Knight d3 is not possible because of a3, but I mean, to calculate all of that till the end is incredibly difficult, and I didn't want to go for that. Instead, what I did was rook to c1. It seemed very logical to me. I'm developing another piece, which is always great. I'm protecting my queen one more time. I'm attacking this queen one more time, so that still he has not enough defenders, and I expected him to play something like rook c8, and then I would think which pieces I should exchange there. But kind of surprisingly for me, he played bishop takes f1 instead, which allowed me to exchange the queens, and I immediately took that chance, because I'm a pawn up. If I exchange the queens, and almost all of the problems are gone, so I immediately jumped at this chance. There is no knight d3, because I'm gonna just take the bishop, and otherwise, what are you gonna do as black? He took it on d2 because he was afraid of some bishop takes b4, I guess, or something else, I'm not sure. But I guess knight takes c7 is a little bit better, because you still have the threat of bishop takes g2. After takes, I was happy to take it back with the king. Knight takes is the only move, the queen has to be taken, and then rook takes f1. And now basically I have solved all of my problems in terms of the development, and I'm even having the initiative in addition to an extra pawn, so that went beautifully for me. And now I felt, okay, I have a beautiful position. I have to win this game if I want to get into the first places. So I should not spoil the entire thing, because it happens so much in my chess career that I have a beautiful position against a very, very strong opponent, and then I somehow manage to spoil it. So I was trying to concentrate as much as I can, because the game is not over yet. It's very far from being over. I played king e2 here because the most obvious plan looked to me to double the rooks somehow on the c file and say that, well, I'm very active here. But the problem is that my opponent just plays b6, and then I just need to go back, and I haven't achieved anything at all. So that was not what I wanted to do. Instead, I wanted to put my king to safety, because here I just hide behind the pawns, there are no checks, the king is in safety. And then I put my rook to the d file, because c and d files are the only open files on the board, so I want to control both of them. And you remember that the rooks are in love with open files, so try to use it. Rook e8, well, my opponent tries to put some pressure here because I still have my king there, and the knight is unprotected. But I spotted there is a very active move here. Actually, there are even two great moves here with the same idea, to jump somewhere with a knight. I chose the move knight to b5, which is very good. It threatens to take the pawn, and it threatens to go to d6 and then attacking the rook, and this knight is unprotected on d5, so it's a very dangerous threat for black. My opponent played knight b4, and I thought, well, I can exchange even more pieces, which helps me to avoid any troubles, and then I can normally play for a win. So I took the rook, and then I decided to take the a7 pawn, because to say the least, I'm gonna have this rook c8 idea, exchanging the rooks. Without the rooks, there are no danger at all for me, and I can just slowly continue to convert this extra pawn in the knight's endgame. But then I realized I actually don't need to do that, because my rook is more active than my opponent's rook. And you remember the golden rule of whether you should exchange your pieces or not. You should look at your piece and your opponent's piece. If your one is more active, then you should not exchange it. If your opponent's one is more active, then go for it. So instead of playing rook c8, I played rook c7, because it's a threat, an immediate threat for my opponent. I'm attacking the pawn, and I'm keeping an eye on all of those pawns, and that played a huge role later on in the game. So my opponent played b6, and now once again I had the chance to play rook c8, and that's gonna be even with the tempo, but I thought, why should I do that? If my rook is so active, let me just play knight to c8. And it felt a little bit scary, you know, this knight on c8 feels a little bit awkward there, but well, once again, if I want to win against a very strong Grandmaster, then I have to be willing to take those risks. No risk, no victory. So, knight to c8, b5, knight d6. I immediately went back. Now it's another attack, and the knights are protected, so I wanted to be as solid as possible. Also, notice that this rook on c7 is beautiful. It controls this very important c1 square, and it's unreachable for the knights to attack. That is very, very important, so I cannot blunder anything. In the rapid chess, at this point, I had less than a minute. It's very important to have all of your pieces secure, because the more pieces you have unprotected and under attack, the more chances you get to lose something. So b4 has been played. I was happy to see this move, because now the knight has no moves at all for the time being, so I have a free hand. Also, this knight on d6 is kind of a double attack move, because not only I'm attacking the b5 pawn, but also the f7 one. It's currently protected from the knight, but nothing stops me from playing f4 and kick the knight away. Afterwards, then the pawn is in trouble. So knight g4, I just took it on f7 with the tempo. Rook f8, I probably can play here the move h3 at least, that is what I thought, but once again, I wanted to be on the safe side, not hanging any pieces around, so I played the move knight g5, because if the knight takes, just look at those knights, both of them are incredibly far away from the action. I could try to just make sure this knight never gets away, or I can play knight e6, which was my idea with a double attack, and winning the g7 pawn, because rook f7 is not possible due to rook c8 back rank mate. So that wasn't really an option for the opponent. He played rook e8 instead, once again still trying to create that threat. That is the thing about very strong opponents. They always try to create as many threats for you as possible, to create that pressure, to make life more difficult for you. But I was aware of it. I just played h3, now pushing the knight away. He played knight f6. And the last little trick for me to calculate, maybe the second to last. I took it on f6 without any danger because, once again, I have currently 2 extra pawns, so I'm happy to exchange as many pieces as possible, but then I even went on to take in the h7 pawn. Even though it feels like the knight is trapped, it's not, because I have so many extra pawns, this knight is so far away that I can go for it. The reason for that is just I continue with g4, and to say the least, I'm gonna have the g5 move, which is gonna save the knight. But I even proceed with h4 because I don't want to divide my pawns here, because after takes, either I have to take with the pawns and then those pawns are divided, or I have to take with a knight, then this pawn is also on its own. So instead of that, I played the move h4 because I thought, well, I have all the time in the world, I want to play g5 now, and then I have 3 connected passers. And my opponent made something incredible here. He decided to sacrifice a knight. I have to give him credit. That is a very interesting idea because, well, you're lost no matter what, so why not try to trick your opponent? And here is the moment where I needed to calculate still some last variations. I have like 50 seconds, and I committed to it, and I have found the best solution, the simplest one here. So I took the knight on c3, b3. Now I'm taking on f6. And, well, you can take it back with a rook, but then rook b7, and I have 28 extra pawns in the rooks endgame that never works for black. And you cannot go to the corner, obviously, because of checkmate in 1. So my opponent played king f7, and initially I thought of giving this fork and being happy to win the rook. But the problem is, in the end of the day, this pawn goes forward, and the position is still winning for white, because you have so many extra material, but it's a completely different story. If you allow your opponent to promote a pawn into a queen like that, this queen would be a pain in the ass for you through the entire game, so that's definitely not what I wanted. Instead, my variation was to play rook to d7. I don't care about the knight, you can take it. Once again, rook b7 back, b2 and rook d1. All I want is to sacrifice my rook for this incredibly strong passer along the b file, and then get all of those pawns against the rook with a knight, which would be more than enough. So that is what happened. Once again, rook f6, just rook b1, the king comes closer, and I take this pawn. So takes, now g5. Just make sure everything is protected. I no longer really need this c3 pawn, but even that is not so simple to get for black. And of course, this h pawn is coming, this e pawn is coming. There is no way for black to save the game. And so I was more or less calm, even though I don't have a lot of time in this position, but I felt like, okay, no way in the world I'm gonna spoil this position. So king to f7, h5. Well, if you have passers, just push it. That is a simple rule, but it applies very good in this situation. Also make sure that your king participates in the endgame, because it's a very active piece. Rook c8. Not really that I didn't want to lose a pawn, but rather I didn't want this rook to be active from behind and started giving me some checks. So I just made sure that everything is protected. Knight d6 is a threat. King a6, and I would just push the pawn into d5. Just h7, there is no way. Now the rook cannot go anywhere because there is always an h8 threat, so I thought it's a good thing for me to make sure the rook can go anywhere. And then g6, and here my opponent resigned because basically there is no way to stop the g7 move. Another threat is knight g5, knight f7, so the game is completely over. And that is the moment I realized that I have got it. I have won 4 games out of 4 on this day, and I have reached the 6.5 points mark, where I shared the first place in the German Chess Championships the first time in my career. I mean, that was an incredible one, and to win against a very strong Grandmaster to end this tournament was, yeah, the biggest good part of it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. What was the biggest victory in your chess career? It's very interesting for me to find out. And in this video, I share with you the pinnacle of my career so far, the games that I have played against the one and only Fabiano Caruana.